Hello, you all got quiet when you saw us.
Well, I'm very excited to see you all. I was telling her I'm always impressed when it's dark outside and you could be home, say in your pajamas, and yet here you are on purpose. So I just want to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
So welcome to the beautiful Plaza branch of the Kansas City Public Library. We're really happy to have all of you here tonight. I'm Kniggendorf. I'm the library's senior writer and editor. And I won't go over everything we have coming up, but we're always real busy here, as many of you know who come to our events. We've got tomorrow evening at the Central Library, a professor from Leavenworth's Command and General Staff College is presenting about the rise and fall of the new Chinese Empire. And those events are really popular. And maybe you wouldn't think so, but people love to hear about military history. And Thursday, we have our annual fundraiser dinner with UMKC to raise money for free writing classes at the library. Has anybody here been to one of those? Yes? Either one. I meant the classes, but yeah, that's great. So there are still tickets for those. On Thursday, best-selling author Candace Millard is the featured speaker. Yes, her book about President Garfield is now a Netflix mini-series called Death by Lightning, and she'll be talking about that mostly. So you can still purchase the tickets, and you can find more information on our website. But you are here tonight to hear about Laurie Dove's debut novel, Mask of the Deer Woman. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm looking forward to this. Laurie lives just north of Wichita in Valley Center. And for decades, she worked as a journalist, editor, and publisher, and has worked with Delta Airlines, Animal Planet, CNN, How Stuff Works, the Los Angeles Business Journal, and many other outlets. She's even been featured on the Discovery television series Mythbusters and Hoarders.
As a writer.
Where you were on Hoarders. And now she's a novelist. So that's an incredible writing career. This book that we're talking about tonight is the first in a trilogy. The next installment will be out in fall 2026, and all of you here in this room will be ready for it. Please welcome Laurie Dove to the library.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am so thrilled and honored to be here with you today. And when I think how this dream started when I was a small child on the farm, to have the honor of it coming to fruition and being able to visit with you today is a joy. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. How was your drive through the Flint Hills?
Oh, gorgeous. As always, gorgeous.
Good. Well, will you tell us a little bit about this book for people who haven't read it to kind of situate them in the conversation?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So Mask of the Deer Woman is about a newly appointed tribal marshal on a fictional reservation in Oklahoma who, to find herself, must find a missing young woman. This character, Carrie Starr, was a celebrated police detective in Chicago, but after her teenage daughter's death, she was mad with grief and asked to leave the force as a result, and took what to her was a job of last resort. She had not dreamed of this, but her father had been raised on this reservation that, to her knowledge, she had never visited. So that gave her an edge when she applied for the Bureau of Indian Affairs federal marshal job. A job, by the way, on this reservation that had not previously existed. Starr was hired to look into the many, many cases of missing or murdered Indigenous women from the reservation. But as soon as she arrives, she is embroiled in the case of this missing college woman. And that, of course, leads her to confront all kinds of things. This in-betweenness she feels by not feeling fully welcomed, and also the life and grief that she is carrying with her. And to complicate matters, she finds that she is confronted by a mythical being from her father's stories, the Deer Woman. And what she doesn't know is whether Deer Woman is there as a protect her or to guide her, or to seek vengeance for the women that she cannot bring home.
Okay, so you were a journalist for a lot of decades, and now you're a novelist, which is an incredible career shift. How did that happen?
Well,
or how did you do that? Because it didn't just happen.
Yes. Well, I have always dreamt of writing fiction. I was born to an Indigenous family and adopted by Mennonite farmers in Kansas, and always surrounded by books and animals. I was particularly crazy about horses, and I read Black Beauty as a child, and I thought, oh, it was revelatory because I realized everything I loved could fit in a book. And what if I was the one writing that story? And that stuck with me through all these years. And in fact, I remember when I was 17 years old, I was standing in my high school library before graduation, and the librarian, who of course I'd spent a lot of time with, said, "What is it you want to do with your one wild and precious life?" And I said, "I'm going to sit on a rock and write." And then we all laughed because it seemed so preposterous how to get from there to here. And I took a path of journalism, and that was in itself very rewarding because I had the honor of telling other people's stories to the best of my ability. And I took that very seriously. And I had the pleasure of interviewing all kinds of people, some of them in very difficult situations, some of them simply enjoying something that they like to do, like building birdhouses or raising five-toed cats. But there were some difficult circumstances too. And through all of those things, the stories for me carried that weight of getting it right. And I had a lot of half-finished manuscripts throughout my adulthood, but I also have 5 daughters, so it, in a way, makes sense. A few years ago, I decided that now was the time, and I entered a graduate program so that I would make an appointment with myself to keep that long ago promise that I was going to write fiction. And out of that was born this book.
And do you consider it suspense or thriller or mystery? How do you classify it?
Well, I didn't know what kind of book I was writing. I didn't set out to write thriller. I didn't set out to write suspense. I set out to write about this character. And this is where Carrie Starr led me. It began as a short story, though, in a suspense class that I took to fulfill a requirement and found that I really loved it. I got a lot out of that class. We were asked to write a short story and to write the ending first, and I did, and it's the ending in this book.
Well, I ask about genre because so often genre fiction, you know, like mystery, thriller, romance, those can be really formulaic. And so what you wrote here isn't formulaic at all, and so, but it does seem to fall in sort of into one of those categories anyway, thriller or suspense. And it almost seems like your subject matter, because you are talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, that kind of begged for genre fiction in a way. So like it almost seemed unavoidable. And maybe it was if it came up in that suspense class.
I believe that's true. I believe I wrote the story that I could tell in the best way that I could tell it about things that were important to me at the time. It's a time capsule of my life in that era in which I was writing it. The things I cared about, the things I worried about, the things I became passionate about, the more I discovered. I wasn't unaware of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and all people crisis, but the more I delved into that, the more passionate I became about that. And it really gave this book a beating heart.
So that's actually what the U.S. Department of the Interior calls this. It's the missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis. Will you talk about that some more? You've mentioned it a couple times, and so have I. What is that about?
Well, it's so large in scope that I almost think we aren't seeing it properly. I've heard it called a genocide happening right under our noses. And if you look at the numbers, that's true. Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than any other population in the United States. It's also an issue in Canada. It's an issue in many places. But when I think of that, I think of how widespread it is, but I think also of one person is too many. One daughter is too many, one sister, one mother. And I've talked to people who have shared some very tender stories with me since the book came out, and feel very strongly that it's an issue that should be addressed from every angle, including person to person, on a person level.
What is it about that community that makes them vulnerable to these crimes?
Well, we have historical and gender and economic and societal disparities. So there are really so many issues that we could talk about. But I think the idea is that it is so widespread. It's an undercurrent really running through a lot of communities, even communities that are simply located geographically in the same area. You know, this book is set partially in Oklahoma, partially in Kansas, but we took extended research trips. And during that time, we spoke with many people who, you know, they either knew someone who was missing, they knew a friend who had someone missing. It is really everywhere.
So it's not just that women are disappearing from reservations.
Correct. In fact, if you look statistically, the majority of Native American women do not live on a reservation. So this is happening everywhere. It is not an other issue. This is someone disappearing from your apartment complex, from your neighborhood, from the grocery store where you shop, where you work out, where you get gas, wherever you go in your life. And it's something that all of us can take the power to learn about, address, become an ally.
Well, does it have to do with, it's so hard to understand why those women would be underreported as missing. So is it like a jurisdictional thing, or why doesn't, I don't understand how that works.
Just like the issue itself, there are so many variables, and one of them is jurisdictional. So there are jurisdictional gaps, but there are also gaps in reporting itself. And so you have one federal database that has a certain number, perhaps around 5,500 missing women. You have another national database that has the number much lower, like in the 1 or 200s. And that is an incredible discrepancy. But the worst part is that is believed to be a vastly underreported figure. So the real number of missing women is much, much higher.
So you mentioned starting this story in a suspense class. And you and I both did MFAs in creative writing later in life. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that. And it sounds like we both wanted to study all of it. And so I didn't have a suspense class available to me, or I would have taken it too. But did you have these as somebody who does have some Indigenous heritage and 5 daughters also, did you have all of this in your mind going into that suspense class?
I didn't. It was all discovered through this character. And the character came to me, and the ending came to me because what I saw was a woman who was a bit older, who was with a woman who was younger, perhaps a similar age as my daughters who were going off to college and into the big wide world. But this older woman, Starr, had to make a decision in that moment. What would she sacrifice for this younger woman? And knowing how I feel about my daughters and their friends and, you know, just younger people in general, I thought in that moment, oh, everything. She would sacrifice everything. And then I went back to the beginning and wrote, and it really grew out of that.
What grade did you get on the class?
Oh, I don't remember. I hope it was an A.
I hope it was an A too.
Yes, I periodically ask my children for letter grades for parenting. I'm like, overall, and a daily grade. And it's great fun. They really enjoy that.
Well, I won't ask you for more specifics. It's a little too personal. We won't get into that. So this novel that came out of an assignment is, I think, complex in the very best ways. And it also does a couple of things that I think art is really meant to do. First, when you think about a story or a painting or a piece of music, I think that really gives people a way to talk about a charged issue or something really personal to them, but in an objective way. So they have this thing that they're holding in their hands that isn't something they made, and it's not something that they have to reveal anything personal about, but that they can, if I don't know you, or even if I do know you, we've got this common piece of art that we can talk about. And I really feel like this is great for that sort of thing, and it's not just about Indigenous women. There's a whole lot more happening here. So what kind of discussions are you aware of that this has kicked off?
Well, my favorite thing that has happened is events like this, where we're all together in the same room, because I find that there's this energy, right, from the discussions we're having, from the thoughts you're having. And I wrote this book and infused my meaning into it, my big questions. One of my big questions in the book was how would reconnection to my Indigenous heritage look like for me? I had long ago reconnected with my birth family, but how would that look like in the greater community? And it gave me a way to explore that. But the wonderful thing that's come out of it is I put my meaning into this book, and everyone who reads it lays their meaning atop. And it changes and evolves, and then we have these discussions afterward, and we all leave a little changed. And I benefit from that, and I hope that you feel that way as well. But I think the greatest joy for me is the surprise that I'm able to be in conversation with a greater humanity about issues that we collectively care about.
Has anyone here tonight been to one of our Casey pop-up book group discussions with Katie Stover about a book? We published that there was somebody, yeah. So this is the next discussion. So this book, you can contact the library and we'll find you a copy of the book, and then you can come and talk to other Kansas Cityans on December 3rd, right back here. Actually, it's in the room behind all of you right now. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, speaking of having conversations,
yes.
You can. So that's an exciting option for people who are interested.
I would love to see you.
So the other thing that I think that that art, and this novel in particular, does really well is let people know that they're not alone, right? I mean, I always look to novels in particular to say to me, you're not alone. And so your protagonist, Marshal Starr, she's going through a lot that some people would find relatable, and even if they don't share her particular struggles, she's so human. That I think there's something relatable about her, even if they don't have those particular issues. Except maybe the part about investigating a murder.
Yes,
like,
maybe.
Although what? But what's going on in Marshal Starr's life?
Well, she had this previous life, right? Her life very clearly has a before and after, and her daughter's death severed those two things. And before her daughter died, she was the kind of person who did things right. She took a spin class on Wednesdays. She, in Chicago, maybe she had a beer when the Bulls played, but she wasn't someone who was drinking. She didn't smoke. She always tried to do the right thing and do right by people, and especially the people who were victims of the crimes that she investigated. And when her daughter died, it changed everything, as it would. And she really found herself questioning, okay, what does justice really look like? And what would justice mean for me? And then as she goes to the reservation where all of these injustices are playing out right before her, she begins to think, oh, what would it look if I could meet justice for this person or all of these people? And so it's a really interesting question. And I think it's reflected in several ways throughout the story, in the story of Dear Woman, in the story of Starr herself. She's complex, she's sometimes unlikable. She definitely uses language that mortifies my mother, who would like me to tell you that I did not hear those words growing up, nor had she ever said them. That's an important disclaimer that I promised to say. But she is real in that way. She is complex. And I think I have known people, maybe you have known people, maybe you have been this person that experiences some terrible event in your life, and yet you get up the next day and you go through your day, and you get up the day after that and you go through your day even when you don't know how you're going to survive it. And that's what we see Starr going through.
Yeah, there's a lot in here about grief and healing both. Yeah, and I like that she really looks to this new community for a way to heal.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more, I think, in a minute.
Yes, well, and I invite you to come along in the second book because I think it will be rewarding.
More about healing in that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this kind of brings us to the Dear Woman, and this is D-E-E-R, not D-E-A-R, which became kind of almost a little joke in our office because it's the Dear Woman. But it's not, it's the Dear Woman. So what is that, or what is she, or what is that? What is the Dear Woman?
Dear Woman has existed in times way before me and will continue to exist way after this story and in many different communities. And this is I felt like it was an important part of this story because I feel like it was a way to exhibit that more than one thing can be true at the same time, and we may not always understand what we see or hear or feel, but that's okay. We don't always have to understand it for it to be valuable.
Okay, and so the Dear Woman is this, the spirit, right? Is it a spirit? And so it's also sort of like a litmus test in a way, right?
Yes.
Of someone's character.
Well, it's that unknowable self. And what Dear Woman is able to do in this iteration anyway, is that she is able to see the real person inside, their intentions, their motivations, whether they are good, bad, however you want to coin those terms, and she acts accordingly. And that's, I think, an interesting proposition if we could know really who someone was other than ourselves.
Well, but other than ourselves, but Starr doesn't know, right?
No, she doesn't know. She's heard this story from her father. It was one of the few stories that he told of his childhood there, and he did pass that along to her. So when she first sees Dear Woman, it is really during a high risk time, high anxiety, all of those things, and she can't believe what she's seeing, and it sticks with her, and she puzzles over this, and she talks to an elder in the community and continues to puzzle over that. But like many things that might feel like a story that grows out of a community and its history, she discovers that it has a very personal tie to the person that she is asking for information about it. So it's got layers.
Well, and also I think it's part of what's scary about this book, right? Because she keeps encountering Dear Woman, but because of all the stuff she's going through and because of something that she has done, she doesn't know if Dear Woman will lead her away into the woods and so that she dies, or if she'll lend her a hand, right? Because those are kind of the options with Dear Woman, right?
Yes, and that's fair because Starr is complex. She's not all good. She's not all bad.
But she doesn't know which one she's more of.
That's
how she'll
right.
be judged.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So to me, that makes it scary.
Yes, and at times, Starr is willing to stand on either side of that line and be fine with it. So it's interesting to see where that ends up.
So you wrote in the book, Dear Woman felt to Starr like the embodiment of the one thing Starr believed, that enforcing the law and carrying out justice were very different. What does that mean?
I think that's really illustrative of her life, her before and after, with her daughter's death right in the middle. Because that before life, she followed the law, she enforced the law, she looked at people a certain way who didn't follow the law, and now she sees everything in a different light, everything. And sometimes she isn't sure what's real and what's not, where she stands and what she stands for. And these are all things that she works out as the Dear Woman is in some ways watching or waiting, or maybe ready to seek vengeance, or maybe ready to render aid. We just don't know.
And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she avenged her daughter's death, right? That's not really a spoiler, is it?
It is not, no. That's part of the reason why she was asked to leave the force in Chicago, because she avenged her daughter's death.
Right, but I guess that's part of the central question then. So was that okay? Was it okay that she did this thing, that she needed to feel better, she needed to eliminate this person?
Yeah, and I would ask everyone who reads the book, is that okay?
To take justice into her own hands. So she has this major battle the whole time going on inside her. And I really liked how you made Dear Woman the one who, it's like she's watching something outside of her, but it isn't really outside of her. And she's just watching to find out, will I be punished for this? It's sort of like knowing if she's going to heaven or hell, but having something just outside of her to kind of, which way is it going to go?
Yes, I didn't think about that.
I love how you did that. So the story is rich in a whole bunch of dualities like that.
Yes.
It's all over the place, and it's so, like, the way that you wrote this was just so tight. That you can say, oh my gosh, look, there it is over there, there it is over there. It's the same back and forth. We have these two options. And so another place where that comes up is in the battle over what should happen with the land. Will you explain that? Because it feels like a similar thing.
Yes. Well, one of the things that has happened is that the missing college student, Chenoweth Cloud, has discovered that there is an endangered species on the reservation. It's out in the wilderness area, quite close to a deal that's coming together with the tribal council for an extraction industry to come into the res and start fracking, doing some oil removal and things like that. And that has implications. An endangered species, a protected species, has implications for all of that development. But for Chenoweth herself, she sees this as, another step in her dream of what she's working toward. And we see, even with her, these things begin to come together, where she is thinking of herself, but she's also thinking of her greater community. And the land is real, and the beetles are really on other sides of this divide. The oil money is supposed to bring a lot of improvement, health clinic, some other infrastructure, some benefits to the people who live there. But what responsibility as a people do we have to this endangered species, or to the land, or to what we're stewards of? So there's really some tension there.
There's a lot of tension there. Yeah, I mean, that's, that just, it's almost like the exact, you made it mirror what's happening inside Starr. Like, is this is going to benefit somebody if we let this terrible thing happen, if we let the land be destroyed. It will benefit people. Like it's a decision that lots of people see as actually good, but then there's the destruction. And so you do, with all the good and evil stuff you have going on in this book, you have some really clear bad guys.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're complex enough that you can kind of, oh, well, actually, I kind of see where this bad guy's coming from. But will you tell us about the mayor? I didn't like her, but she's a great character.
Yes, so
You don't like her either, do you?
No, I don't. No, I do have to say I was the mayor of my community for a while before I wrote the book, and I was not an evil mayor, but it allowed me to see like, oh, how I could have been, what could have happened. And we also had a really lovely city administrator who was not at all villainous as this character in the book. But what I found really interesting were how a municipal government system works and who's involved in it and what could go wrong.
Well, so who is this mayor? What's she up to?
Well, she is kind of tired of the life she's living, and she's ready for a bigger life. So she's making deals with higher government officials to help this oil deal go through. On the city's end, they're putting in some infrastructure. I know an awful lot about roadways that I never thought that I would know. And so how all of that will come together really also relies not only on the actions of the decision makers on the Salakwa Nation, but also of this nearby city that is helping to smooth that deal out.
Okay. But she's really in it for herself.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
She definitely is. And you said something interesting when we talked for the article in the Star about how I think this was another one of those dualities that like people in a city, they want to say, well, the city decided to do this thing, but that there's no city, right?
Yes.
Who is it?
That's right. Well, the city is everyone. The city is every citizen. And that's how I felt as mayor. And this character in the book, she does not feel that way. She is the city, and she's making those decisions, and she's going to railroad things through. And she's put together a council that is really just a yes council that will agree to wherever she takes them. And that can be a dangerous thing, especially when there's that prevailing opinion that, oh, the city does these things as if it's a separate entity from the people who live within it, and it simply isn't.
Eventually, they all get caught.
That's right. That's the best part. So they get caught. There is some really satisfying justice that happens.
Yeah, there is. So before you started writing this, was it on your radar that that fiction, the world of fiction, needs more complex characters? Was that something on your mind, or did that just sort of happen?
I don't think I could write a character any other way. I'm fascinated by people. I think that came out of my long years of reporting and meeting so many different people. I just find, especially complex people, which is everyone, extremely fascinating. And to be able to capture even a little bit of that in these characters, if you think I did, then I think I did my job.
You did, definitely. So you had mentioned some story about before you started working on novels at all, that you were on a ride in the car up to Kansas City and you were listening to a book on tape.
Oh, yes, well, so my dear husband, who's there this evening, and I were driving up to Kansas City to go to the Nelson, as one does, and he was listening to one of these detective novels, and it was a male detective, and he was writing about a female character, and I was like, oh, I don't think he's ever met a woman. So that was probably, I don't know, 15 years, longer, I don't know. It was a long time ago, but that really stuck with me this whole time, apparently. So I knew what kind of characters I was going to create.
Okay. I also wanted to talk about it's the mask of the deer woman.
Yes.
So what is this mask? I mean, Starr runs into it a few times. So and she gets this real visceral reaction to this mask. So we talk about where she sees that to begin with.
Yes, so it is only her third day on the job, and she is so steeped in her own grief that she's not really a functioning person, certainly not a well-functioning tribal marshal at this point. And she's been getting these messages or these calls that this woman, she's just hysterical, says her daughter's missing. Well, Starr goes over there and isn't entirely convinced. I've read and heard a lot of real life stories about someone's child who is missing, but that child might be a little older. And so, the detective who is taking the information is like, well, she's 18. She has the right to leave and not tell you. Thanks, have a good day. And Starr really kind of had that attitude in the beginning when she first went to this woman's home, 3 days fresh on the job, and had this conversation with her. But there was something about that environment and the mask of the deer woman that was in that home that really set her back on her heels. And she had both a mental and a physical reaction to it, and it almost served to take her out of herself so that she could begin to see and help the people around her.
But it also seems like a symbol of something, right? I mean, does it have to be a symbol?
Well, I wanted to be able to characterize the fact that the way that people see the world is not separate from how they move through the world. That what someone might look at as an artifact, or maybe that should be in a museum, is hanging on the wall in the living room in a trailer home, along with some other things, and it's part of everyday life. And I feel really strongly that those belief systems aren't something that people just enter into on occasion. It's a way of life. And so that was a way to represent that. But again, it was also that duality that's reflected through the whole book.
And I thought it was funny that you made the mask change shape.
Yes.
Yeah, what did that mean? Why did you make that decision? So as Starr is watching this mask on the wall, it seems to be moving.
Yes,
right?
And this is very early in the book, so right away she isn't sure if she can trust herself. She isn't sure if she can trust what she sees and take things at face value. And it shows that there is much more at work there, much more underneath. Just as we have this crisis running underneath every activity in everyone's lives there, we also have something that symbolizes that.
And what she figures out after a while is that she's actually spent more time with these people, with this community,
yes,
than she knew.
Yes.
And so, I think the effect of that is that she ends up grounded. It's like this accidental grounding, right? What does that do to her? How does that change the character?
Well, it's really very good for her to go somewhere where she believed that she was a stranger, that she belonged and maybe also didn't, and this was not a place she was familiar with. But as she goes along and as she becomes part of this community, she learns, oh yes, she was here. She just doesn't remember. She was so young. And some of these people, including one of the elders that shares with her the story of the deer woman and things like that, this is someone who is helped take care of her when she was there as a very young child. So there are all of these connections that aren't immediately made apparent to Starr, but all of these intersections between her and the people of the Salakwa Nation.
Yeah, that ends up being a real surprise. That the more she looks around, the more she realizes that she actually is part of this community.
Yes.
And that feels like feels like the first time she steps on something solid.
That's a great way to put it, yes. And it really, I think, changes for her this notion that she is going to find this one girl to, oh, she really is going to do the job she was sent here to do. She wants to find every girl.
And before we wrap up, I want to, these books are for sale. This book is for sale out in the lobby, and we'll do a signing immediately after. But if people are thinking right now about gifts, like a book they might like to buy as a gift, this isn't, how do you characterize the level of intensity of this? You know, just, I try to describe that to somebody, and I mean, there are scenes of some level of violence, but it's not too alarming.
It's off the page for the most part. If you're unsure, I would say read it first before you give it away.
Okay, all right. That works. And I see already that somebody in our online audience has asked a question. So I would like to go ahead and open to Q&A then, if you feel ready. You feel ready?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I love Q&A. I love this part.
Because people are watching online, we would like anyone who has a question to come up to the microphone so that people online can hear the question. And also make sure that whatever you say ends in a question mark. Sometimes that's tricky for people. But let's see what we've got from online while you're all thinking. Okay. We've got, was there anything you experienced while writing the book that you didn't expect when you first started?
Oh, that's a terrific question. So many things, so many things. Personally, it was a lifelong dream come true to finish this book, and whether it had been published or not, I still would have finished it, and I would have gone on to write another and another, because I decided this is what I want to do the rest of my life. But I think what perhaps this surprised me, other than what I mentioned earlier about being able to be in conversation with you, is the call to action that I hope this book has become. It is such an unwieldy issue in some ways, and I hope that in some small way this book drives someone to take whatever action that they're able to take to the best of their ability.
What might that be? What sorts of things could people do?
Well, I had a 92-year-old woman who read this book. She started one afternoon, she read all night, and when the sun came up the next morning, just as she turned the last page, she donated a semester of college to a Native American woman in honor of Chenoweth in the book.
Wow.
And it's hard to talk about without crying a little bit, because that was more than I had dreamed of, and it opened me up to all of the possibilities that we might be able to change if we can all take action together.
This is not a question, but I don't know if you've watched the series, which has ended now, but a great series, Reservation Dogs, about young Native Americans making their way in Oklahoma. Dear Woman was a figure in there. So there were a lot of appearances by Dear Woman. She was this beautiful warrior with hooved feet who was really scary, but she had an incredible impact. So I'm assuming that's the same character, right?
Well, it's an iteration of that. I'd actually written the book already when that series came out, and it was really exciting to know that there are so many voices out there telling Indigenous stories. There seems to be an upswelling right now of people being able to do that, and I would just like to see that continue.
We have another one from someone watching on YouTube. Dear Woman used to be depicted as a much scarier character. Do you think the shift toward a more benevolent figure comes from a change in what stories we need, or a change in Dear Woman herself?
Oh, yes. Well, she can have a very scary side as well, deadly, in fact. for the purposes of this story, I really wanted her to embody the things that I feel like women are, which we can be so nurturing and loving and life-bringing, but also if someone were to say, harm your child, you might become an entirely other person who would mete out some justice. So I liked examining those sides of Dear Woman.
Okay, so she can really be anything.
Yes.
Right, and that was
yes.
part of the problem in the novel,
Yes.
is that we don't know which one she's going to be.
Yes.
And
yes.
so to find that out, you kind of have to do a lot of self-investigation.
Yes, but she really has the potential to exact some very deadly justice as well.
Yes.
Thank you for writing. I've not read it yet, but I plan to, and buying it tonight. I am currently reading Ghost Talk by Susan Cooper with a group of fourth graders at the school where I'm principal at. And I wanted to ask, that brought up questions of how would this book be different if it were written by a non-native author, and what, I guess, of your background do you bring to that in being able to write this story maybe in a more authentic way?
Yes, well, I will say that one of the things that surprised me was the way my research methods and training as a journalist showed up in the book, and I think we really see that when we look at the real life issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the book. Even though it's fiction, that is absolutely true. And I happen to really enjoy books that I may pick up because it seems like a great story, but remember long afterward because of what I've learned. And that was the balance that I was hoping to find.
Found it.
Thank
I think
you.
you found it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Anybody else want to come up? Okay, well, maybe you'll think of something and then you'll go buy her book and then you'll ask her when you ask her to sign it. That could happen. I think it happens every time we have an event.
Or get in touch later. I love to have reader conversations, so.
Okay, well, Laurie, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.